Hi there! Welcome to On the Flip Side, a podcast for anyone who wants to live their best sales life. We're going to be talking to buyers, sales managers, SDRs, and A's about things like what does it take to be a great sales manager? Or how can you go home happy month after month? So let's dive right in. Welcome so much, folks. Welcome to On the Flip Side with Wingman. I'm Kushal, your host for today, and I'm super excited to introduce our guest for today's show, Stan. He was the co-founder of Intro.so, a Chrome extension that gives you research right within your Google Calendar and all your prospects. I'm assuming that means less fidgeting, less tabbing around on different tabs, and just more research right in your calendar. Great to have you on the show, Stan.
Excited to be here also. Yeah, perfect intro. Thanks for this.
Okay, Stan, so I know today, of course, we're going to be talking all things cold email. And I know that both of us are sort of in the middle of cold climates. I'm, of course, based in India. You're in Warsaw. So it's pretty much cold and in a lot of other places in the world as well. And I think that's a perfect time to be talking about how to use cold email. So first off, right, there's a lot of criticism around cold email to begin with. You know, just like cold calling, right? It's one of those few things. Everyone's always asking, is cold email dead? Does cold email even work? How can you warm up your cold email, right? What's your take? Does cold email still work?
Yes, it 100% works. I believe that cold email is my superpower. It still works. You need to do it well to make it work, but if you manage to do it, which is extremely easy, and I will be talking about how I do it, and probably you, Kushal, will be also talking about how you do it. It works perfectly. It's still a great tactic and great outreach method, and it was great in 2021. It will be great for 2022 also.
It's interesting you say that, right? Because even if you ask a lot of marketers, you know, what if LinkedIn went away tomorrow? What if Facebook went away tomorrow? What if all of these other platforms that we use a lot for prospecting, right? And outreach really went away. And a lot of marketers will still answer email. So having a solid email strategy, even for nurture, is sort of a key part for most marketers as well. I guess even before we go ahead, right? What would you really say is good cold email to begin with? How would you really quantify that? So a lot of folks, for instance, will say if you get like 50% opens, that's good. If you get maybe a 10 to 20% reply rate, that's good. What's your take on really how to benchmark good email?
Yeah, I mean, the good email needs to make a recipient take action that we want. So I wouldn't necessarily focus on those metrics like open rates and reply rates. Those are extremely important, but you first need to sort of make sure that your emails are booking meetings. Of course, this could be a problem where your emails actually aren't booking meetings, right? So then you can take a look at open rates. It's a good benchmark to keep around about 50% of 50% of people should open your emails. And then, you know, depending on the quality of the email, depending on how much the personalization, how much time have put into personalization and how the email is personalized, then you can think about, okay, the reply rates should be around 10 to 20%, maybe not 30% if you are extremely targeted, meaning out of 100 emails that you sent, you should be able to see around 2, maybe 5, up to even 30 emails back. So that is my benchmark. I know it's a big benchmark, but you know, not every email campaign is different. If you're doing extremely targeted and the whole sort of email campaign market is 50 people, then you know you should expect to have higher numbers because you will spend more time actually thinking about what will make people respond.
Got it. So Stan, here's another question while we're talking about numbers and what really benchmarks, you know, to use for good cold email. How many emails do you really think it takes in today's world to get a reply? Should we be aiming for, you know, what first email at bam, I get a reply? Or, you know, how many do you kind of suggest in a sequence? 5, 6, 10?
Yeah, so I think
when should someone give up?
I mean, it's really like a personal thing. I can tell what is my experience and why I'm doing the way I'm doing, but you should test it, right? So I usually send one, two emails, and then I respect a response. After that, it's extremely low chance of getting actually a response, and you should keep the follow-ups coming in if those leads are extremely important to you, but in a very wide time frame, meaning after 2 emails in a span of 4 days. So 1 email on the day 0, and then second email on the day 2, maybe 3. then you should really think about a weekly emails, meaning you send one follow-up every week until they respond, or until you feel it's not worth it. I wouldn't necessarily go more than 7 to 10, but you should aim to get a response in the first 1 or 2 emails actually based. How is it for you? I mean, how many do you usually get? How many follow-ups do you usually put in?
So let's talk about me as a receiver of email, right? To begin with, because I think that gives you a really great perspective. If you kind of, what do you respond to yourself? So for me, I will definitely respond to first emails if I feel they're super, super impactful, super personalized. And if they really talk to something that I'm trying to solve for at the moment, just at that time. I will, however, also respond to email number 3 or 4. And I've noticed this, I'm not really proud of this, but especially in emails where the person says, okay, you know what, I tried, I'm going to give up. This is the last one you're going to hear from me, right? And then at point I'm like, oh no, wait, you know what? I was sort of interested in what you were saying, but I maybe just wasn't able to respond for some reason or the other. Right? Because even email fatigue is sort of a thing, and there are only so many days that most of us have in our days, only so many hours. So I have, for instance, even responded in the positive to emails 3 and 4 in a sequence as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because normally, the way I think about the follow-ups is the first email is the most important email. And then the second email is, hey, have you thought about this, like after 2 days? And usually, after this time, they are either going to respond, or the chances are going almost to zero. I have seen actually this sort of, hey, I'm breaking up with you, I won't contact you anymore work. I'm not a fan, but as everything that we probably talk about here today, you should test it on your own and make your own assumptions and see if it actually works.
I agree. I think it definitely is all about testing. I think different sequences, different words, a different method altogether will work for different folks and different audiences. So I think that part around testing is super key. Stan, just going back a little bit, and I shared this on LinkedIn as well, right? How, in fact, one of my earliest job interviews I secured by cold email. And I didn't think of it as cold email back then in the day. I just thought of it as, hey, I don't know this person. I have an email ID, like a corporate email ID. So I'm just going to email them and ask for a job interview. It worked. That was the fun part. And I realized only recently that for the current position at which I'm at, Wingman as well, that also came to me via cold email in one sense. I knew the company was hiring. I got that information, but I didn't, I had no other inroads into the company. I again just sent a cold email. So I think that's sort of to speak to the power of cold email, to not underestimating the various uses beyond just prospecting, right? To just kind of getting your foot into the door for so many folks. I think that's why it's so important for so many of us to pay more attention to cold email.
Yeah. So going back to the example that you just gave, did you for your current position, did you send an email like to the recruiter, or did you send an email to like jobs at Wingman, or what was the sort of the play here? Because I'm sure others are also interested.
Yeah. So I sent this one to a careers ID. That's careers@trywingman.com. Incidentally, folks, we are still hiring in case you're interested in joining us. So I sort of wrote into careers@trywingman.com. I think that was the email ID that was advertised, from, the open source. I think there was an invitation on an alum board somewhere. That's how I got the information. It was publicly shared. I got the email address of that, and I just wrote into the team. Did whatever research I could on the company, of course, beforehand. I checked out the folks, the co-founders, the company on LinkedIn, wherever else I could. Thought about whether it was a fit for me and whether I would be a fit for them as well to begin with. So I did that research upfront. And then after all of that research, I sent in that email and I got a response within a couple of hours, I think.
Yeah, this is the important part. The research, right? You need to know who you're reaching out to, and you need to sort of gain some conviction on why actually you're reaching out to, why they should respond. This is the sort of key important part. You should think about why they should respond, how we can put the stuff that you want to tell in the email, making them respond in the shortest way possible. My sort of trick around managing the length of the email is I try to think of a way where I pay $1 for every word I write, meaning that I really, really want to cut down every unnecessary word that is in the email. Meaning, I can say I'm excited, or I am really excited. Those are too many words. This all adds up that necessarily they are not adding real value. So this is actually, really important, making sure that the emails are short, but also like you mentioned, checking if actually there is a fit and there is a worth your time. Sending an email to careers email or sending an email to the new prospect that you're dying to get is actually, there's a possible fit.
I think that's a great point you make around really doing your research, of course, beforehand, right? And that seems to be one of the most important things when it comes to cold email. How relevant do you make it? Of course, you evaluate for yourself whether that person makes sense for you to pursue, and again, how relevant you make it for the other person also to respond. It seems like a large part of this is probably a lot of deep research and maybe some personalization as well. Is it really possible to do this at scale, or would you suggest kind of spending a lot of time on each email and then kind of focusing on quality versus quantity? What's your approach on this?
Yeah, so I think you need to find a balance like everything. I think if you are, what you're looking for in terms of personalization and you already done some email personalization in the past, you can take it 20 seconds actually to get that right, basically for each recipient, which is not that a lot of time. But if you're just sort of thinking about, okay, what can we include, then you possibly can take a little bit of time. And the truth is, if you can't find anything online of the person that you're reaching out to, it may be worth it to actually skip this person and focus your efforts on people that you can find something about and you can mention, and it's relevant to your case that you're making in your email. This is, of course, a big if. Your market needs to be large enough where you can actually get the permission of yourself to skip one prospects, right? Because like I mentioned, if you want to reach out to 100 people that you've specifically picked for some reason, you will probably spend some little bit of time on personalization and spend a little bit of time on research on how to make every email perfect, because you can. But if you're sending like thousands of emails every month, you don't have that much time, right? You need to send 100 emails or 50 emails a day. So you need to keep it snappy, basically, for your own personal sales development workflow.
So start going back a little bit to what you talked about earlier about thinking about why would someone want to respond to you. What's maybe, and I know this is always a heavily asked and contested sort of question, right? But what do you think really is a great way to ask for next steps? What would a great CTA in an email look like? Are there certain CTAs that you've tested out that seem to perform better than others?
Yeah, so I mean, so you were asking about like how should you end an email, and this is a great question that you need to think about. Like, the email is not to close the deal. The email is get you an interview, a call, a meeting, a conversation. And this is a great thinking. However, I found that asking for a meeting on the first email is not ideal, because what you really want is you want to open a conversation and not necessarily you want a meeting booked on your calendar. So you should always ask, like, sounds interesting, worth a conversation, something that is really more open-minded, then they can say yes to way easier than how about a meeting at 2 p.m. next Thursday. Again, this is sort of my testing and my concept. You should really test them, how they work for you, but I found that asking straight up if they're interested, or is it worth exploring further, or care to see more, something around those lines is usually what works best for me. How about you? What's your take on this?
Could you just repeat that from the top a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, what do you think about the ending line of the email?
So I think when it comes to the end, when folks in an email would just outright ask me to book a meeting, I think I'm fairly less likely to do that, right? Because 15, 20, even 30 minutes is a fair ask of someone's time, especially when they don't know you from before. There's no prior trust. There's no prior exchange of ideas. I don't know whether this is going to be worth my time. So I think I would be much less likely to book a meeting for something like that, unless I was so close to making a buying decision on something and that email just happened to pop up at the right time, right? And they figure that out either maybe from what I was posting on LinkedIn, or maybe I dropped in a demo request on some other tool or retargeting, or in some other way that they managed to figure out that if I was, for instance, really close to making a buying decision on a tool or a software, then maybe I would be more open to saying, okay, you know what, I already am interested in this concept. Let's take it a step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so great that you're actually telling exactly what I just told, which is like, it's do not ask for a meeting straight away. You ask for a conversation, ask if they're interested, yes or no. I mean, that's the key here, because then you can actually, if you have a response, you can work with that response, and you have, I would say, like a second shot cold email where you restate the value, tell them again why this could be interesting, and then ask for a meeting. That is usually my thinking, and great that we sort of, you as an end recipient think that we think alike.
Got it. So, Stan, we've of course talked about personalization. We've talked about making the email relevant for the prospect as well. Are there any tips around any of these that you think we haven't covered so far?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to actually sort of learn about the company that you're reaching out to is go for reviews. But reviews, and you can, for example, check if you're reaching out to CEO, they usually care about their customers, so you can possibly go around looking at G2 Crowd or similar review websites, and you can see what are reviews they're getting, like why customers are picking them, and possibly you can then tie that around into your value proposition. What is also really cool is you can use reviews for like personalization, meaning you can go to someone's LinkedIn profile and see reviews that they have received, but also the reviews that they have given out, which is even more cooler because you can see directly what language do they use, what they care about, and what is important to them, because they actually, put that in about other people that they care about this. So this could be an interesting way to, just get ideas on how can you frame the problem and the solution that you're trying to propose, but also, find some ideas around the personalization. Again, simple stuff like going to LinkedIn profile and seeing like description, if they have they like some sport, or they have a background of ocean, they possibly like an ocean, so we can mention some ocean, that this tool is like in red ocean strategy, or whatever it is, whatever you can make some relevant jokes and curious way to pick someone interest. I would say that's it. And yeah, also one idea is to go to company's blog, because usually if there's a smaller company, the CEO or the someone is important is also posting content on there. So, and of course, the usual stuff, the LinkedIn content. If there's someone is posting, you can mention something that they have posted previously, and then use that as a relevant piece of sort of tie point where you can work around and create an email and craft an email about the value proposition.
I think those are really interesting ideas, Stan, to sort of go into someone's LinkedIn and go beyond what they've just posted, but actually look at the recommendations they've given other people, and not just what they've written on their own profile, but then also understand the kind of words they probably write, the kind of tone they probably write. And like you said, probably mirror that in some way in your own writing, like you said. So I think mirroring, maybe even via words, seems to be possible in some sense. That's a really interesting way to put it. I honestly can't wait to maybe get an email sequence from you to see what that looks like as well. Now I'm curious. And maybe just kind of going ahead a little bit. So we spoke initially about, keeping emails super short and kind of to the point, taking out extra words, $1 per word sort of thing. Do you think that shorter emails do actually do better, or would you also test longer emails?
Yeah, so again, this is my experience. I may be wrong. You can probably find some case studies that prove otherwise, basically. So this is like my personal experience. And if you really want to have more space, you can, for example, create a story with a sequence of email, meaning the first email is like the beginning of your story, and the second email is something that you restate that you couldn't really fit in the first email. And think about like 6 or 7 emails or 5 emails that you send out, like one big email that at the end they understand fully, and just keep it as a priority, meaning the first email is the most, you mentioned something that is most important. The second email is for example, could be around your customer segment, or around the previous case studies or reviews that you got. And then again, third email, keeping the story live and asking different question in every email, because then you have the higher strength. Like if the first email didn't really resonate, you have the second follow-up email where you can ask some other question that could unlock something in their mind that, okay, this is interesting, I want to hear more.
So here's an interesting idea, Stan. What if we sort of took the prospect along on our journey and told them upfront, you know what, I will be taking on a journey of 3 emails. So here's what's going to happen in email one, and almost tease it in some sense and make it full of suspense and do a great job of storytelling, then obviously, and kind of maybe create like hooks for them to actually look forward to the next email. Do you think that could work?
I don't know. I think it could work, but I also can find some arguments that it won't work, right? Because but then again, if you say something like this and someone says no, then they already sort of disqualified themselves and you don't have to waste time on them, right? So yeah, I think this could be interesting. But again, if you craft your first email as a great one, you probably won't need as many sort of follow-up questions that you can ask. And also, like, I'm not sure if I have mentioned this, that asking a lot of questions in your emails are great. So you don't have to necessarily focus on the one point and picking one question that you want to ask per email. You can keep it 3 or 2, maybe 2 questions per email, meaning, have you thought about this? What are your thoughts around this specific strategic narrative? And then the second one, other question in the different part of the email also, which you simply, what I'm saying is you shouldn't be afraid of asking questions in email, because the questions are helping you create the sort of a context and get prospect to stop for a second and think and then possibly reply back to you.
Got it. So with the goal of asking questions, is it really do you really expect to get a response to those questions that you ask, or do you simply, want to kind of make the person curious in their own time and space, and hopefully that will lead to a response in that email or the next one?
So I actually, when I ask a couple of questions in email, I usually get a response to one of them, meaning that if I get a reply, I get the response, and then I can then work with that response to possibly craft a reply back to the prospect that just replied to me to try to book a meeting, which is great because then you learn something about their company, and there's another piece of valuable information that you can use further along the sales development process, which is like getting them to book a call with you. So yeah, I actually, usually if you ask them 2 questions, they will respond to one of them. Not necessarily both, because that's not sure why is that, but that's how it is basically. But they will actually respond to one of them questions that you ask, which is great, because then if this question is valuable, you can use that to actually tie in your value proposition in the reply back email.
Got it. Stan, I think we've gone over some really interesting points over this session. I think just a few more interesting questions for you. What's maybe, one of the not so great feedback, that you've received on emails that you sent out? I know a lot of people can be snarky when they're replying to email as well. Have you ever had to face any of those?
Yeah. I've been told to go to hell. I've been sweared. So it's cursed. It's a normal. It's like part of the game. And they sometimes prospect even tell me, unsubscribe, where actually there is no list that I have subscribed to them, which is, funny, because I actually took the time to focus and to personalize the email, and they also replied unsubscribe. It's like, it's part of the game, right? You are reaching out to them, so you need to be prepared that they will straight up say no. So it's yeah, happens all the time.
Got it. And do you ever reply back to emails that you might be getting from folks who are prospecting to you? Do you ever reply back with feedback or anything else to them?
Not necessarily. No. Yeah. Actually, if their email is extremely bad, I will reply linking to sort of my thoughts about cold email and what you should do next. But if the email is not so bad and I'm simply not interested, I just reply on the first email in the minute that I open it that I'm not interested, saying just no thanks, and that's it. And usually that will do, just help them get to the closure and not bother me anymore, because I know that they will send more emails. So it's, if I read the email and I find nothing interested in this, I will say that I'm not interested, because they will send more emails. So why should bother?
Got it. I think that's also a good way to earn good email karma, to sort of pass it around.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Just Stan, one more question before we wrap up the session. If you had to sort of describe cold email and the art really of sending cold email and say one phrase in one line, one sentence, what would that be?
Write short, sweet emails, right? That's true. Try to present your value in the shortest way possible, right? My couple of emails that I actually sent that were extremely successful were one sentence. So one line even. So one sentence, one line. It was extremely short, and they actually work, because if it's a one specific strategically asked question, they will respond, because it's simple to respond to specific and concrete question, rather than like open mandates asking them how much revenue you want to grow, or like how big is your team. I mean, those are stupid questions, but if you ask good specific question, then you have a higher chance of getting a response.
Got it. Love it, Stan. I like that slogan of write short, sweet emails. I think that's a great note to end this on. Thanks so much, Stan. Appreciate your time today. This has been really useful.
Yes. Was super excited to talk to you.
Yes. Thank you.